Hannah, where does this interview find you today? You're always traveling. I never know where you are. Are you
Hi,
home?
Hi, John. Too true. Today I am home. I am in Denver, Colorado, and it's great to be here. I have a bit of respite from the planes, trains, and automobiles. I'm looking forward to enjoying a Colorado summer.
It's always fun to get an email from you or a connection because I never know where you are on the
A
planet.
time zone is usually a stamp. Yeah. It helps.
So thank you for doing this. I very much appreciate it. As you know, you spoke to our private peer advisory group earlier this year, and it was just so well received. It is the reason why I ask if we could do this today and promote the good work that you do at Concordia. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for that.
Thank you. And it's a great opportunity to not only connect with business leaders across Colorado with the network you've built, but also, of course, share what Concordia does to a broader audience. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. We've only known each other a short time, and I don't know for sure, but I have a hunch because of where you went to school that you grew up in the Midwest. Is that correct?
Yes, I grew up in Iowa. I'm a first generation American. And so my mother is German. Well, she's now a US German citizen. But when I was growing up, she was still a German citizen. And so I grew up in Iowa, but always with a wider global aperture and appreciation for different cultures and backgrounds and travel.
Did she speak German to you when you were growing up?
She tried. We did not speak back to her. And so, it was a very one-sided conversation. But I did learn it in school. So I
Yeah.
studied it starting fourth grade onwards. I actually earned my master's degree in German and European studies later. And so having dual proficiency in different European languages was a graduate requirement. So I have studied formally German, and now I am trying to teach my daughter, and we'll see if we have a similar fate of her just not speaking it back. But yeah.
I think that's pretty typical. It was fun for me to go back and look at your internships. You did one for the Council on Foreign Relations. You did one for the European Union in Brussels,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so when I was living in DC and studying at Georgetown, I had a number of internships. I've always been fairly busy on my side. So the Council on Foreign Relations one was great. They, of course, have their New York headquarters, but a DC base for conversations. And my glamorous job was mic running. But it meant I got to be in all the rooms where the conversation was happening. And CFR is a member-based organization. They're not public conversations. So I would be studying foreign affairs during the school day or evenings and then hearing about the authors or the reports or the policies at the same time from the actual drivers of it because of the DC ecosystem. So it was great. I just stood there with a microphone and ran it. But I think I did better in my classes and reports because I had that inside knowledge. And then other internships I had, I interned at the State Department in Berlin, working on the economics desk, as well as their DC headquarters at the UN Public Affairs desk. And so I worked on UN multilateral issues as well as bilateral relation sets. And then the European Parliament internship focused on security and defense. And so I had a dual track between both the DC head or DC office that they have, and then I spent the summer in Brussels and Strasbourg working on defense policy.
Hmm. So you started at Truman State, political
Mhm.
science and communications and German. You
Mhm.
you studied there. Why did you choose Truman State at the time?
It was very affordable. They offered me an excellent scholarship package, which I think is worth students taking into account. It was about 3 hours from home, so it felt like a newer space, but also with proximity. And then my older sister went there, so I had some familiarity with it. In retrospect, I probably should have chosen a different space because I think I really found my own footing once I did an internship in DC and kind of moved outside of the Midwest space. But that being said, it was a smart decision at the time.
Hmm. And then Georgetown for you.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
so tell me about that experience, if you would, please.
Yeah, I studied it through one of the regional programs. So the School of Foreign Service is the master program. It's the one that is it's the parent umbrella of their foreign affairs programming set that is internationally acclaimed.
Mhm.
MSFS is the kind of largest school within that, the Master of Science in Foreign Service. And then there's a regional set of programs. I think there's maybe four or six different regional and specific studies. So School of Security Studies. So the program I went to is German and European Studies. And so it focused on the transatlantic relationship, as I mentioned, as a daughter of a German, I was always inclined towards that. And so I really focused again on security and defense matters throughout all my classes as it affected the European bloc. And so I studied a lot the Balkans because that was at the time the most recent destabilization in the region. Of course, after I graduated, we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so that is assumingly what others have focused on since then. But yeah, I became very well versed in the Balkan crises of the 90s. And I thought it was a great program. I appreciated the academic rigor of Georgetown, but also the practical learnings that the professors provided, because many of them, again, were practitioner professors coming from State Department or the different agencies or, really well versed in kind of the day-to-day application. So it wasn't truly just theoretical knowledge that we were building. We were actually getting the skill set and the applied learnings from their time in the field, which was great.
Was the United States Institute of Peace your first job out of college?
Out of grad school, yes. So I joined USIP in 2011, and I had always worked my entire time there. I was working in the executive office. I worked for a variety of figures. I joined first at the organization to support Steve Hadley. He was planning to write a book on national security agencies and coordination and bring in all of his NSA leadership into the space. Unfortunately, within 2 months of me accepting the position, he also became chairman of the board of USIP. And because of statute limitations, he wasn't allowed to have staff. So we were ships passing in the night. He always looked out for me on site, but I was never truly in the role. But that being said, I was able then, because of that, to work across a variety of special projects for the Institute, both internal, things like the strategic planning process, but also external. The USIP team had a fantastic partnership with DoD working on defense policy. And so I worked on the DoD report. I worked on non-proliferation between US and Turkey and Track 2 relations. I worked with the great Johnny Carson on North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa related matters specific to Nigeria. And yeah, I got to work across a broad set of regions, issues, subject matters, and truly appreciated the opportunity to work so closely with the senior advisors because I got to learn from them directly. And in my experience, that was not something that many in other agencies had the ability for. It's hyper bureaucratic in the US government, of course. And so USIP as a non-government entity really afforded a lot of the leadership access and proximity to the issue sets, but without the bureaucracy.
What did you do next?
I briefly worked to help start up an entity that spun out of USIP.
Mhm.
And so it was the Peace Tech Lab. And it was this idea of how technology as a neutral platform could be used towards creating stabilization spaces. And so, as an example, in refugee and immigration spaces, data became a valuable collection tool to support with resource delivery. It's hard to imagine, but we really at that time didn't have these devices.
Right.
And so it wasn't a space that you had all of the information you needed to inform policy and budgets. So
Mhm.
Peace Tech became a proliferation of apps and tools and technologies and ideas. So
Mhm.
Peace Tech Lab, as a spun off out of USIP, became a 501c3 that really looked to create an ecosystem of investment and uh, entrepreneurial support in that regard. I was with them for a handful of months just to operationally help set them up and structure their kind of day-to-day rhythm. During that time, I worked as a point of contact for Concordia.
Mhm.
Concordia had a partnership with Peace Tech Lab, USAID, and State Department to host a summit at the U.S. Institute of Peace. And so I became the internal relationship manager for that. And that's how I became familiar with Concordia.
Yeah. So Concordia is only 15 years old, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're
So
celebrating our 15th anniversary this year. We have moved into this great milestone and are tremendously proud of the growth over the past 15 years.
would you please talk a little bit about Matt and Nick and how they started Concordia?
Yeah, Matt and Nick are our two co-founders. They have the best origin story. They were actually friends in primary and high school and created this small business in high school selling snacks. And so they were business partners, but also 17 years old. So it was precious. But then they went to school in Georgetown, or well, one went to Georgetown and one went to GW. And so
Mhm.
they were living in DC, working in this space, and they both had an internship at a news outlet. And so they were working together and seeing behind the scenes how policy was shaped and formed and translated. And they felt a general, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but a general frustration with the activities associated with convening. And they thought, what if we did this better?
Mhm.
And so, uh, with no hubris, but just what if we did it differently? What if we tried something? And so they started Concordia alongside the UN General Assembly. It brought together around 100 persons. It was very small, very driven by 22-year-olds, but it brought together the right 100 persons and through their own relationships, networks, and again, just the audacity of what they were trying to build, it captured the attention of some very senior folks. And so they actually hosted President Bush during that first space. It was the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And so he was a headline speaker for it. And the audience felt that there was something there that they were building by
Right.
being truly a space for the private sector to be coming into these conversations
Mhm.
and to be thinking about public-private partnerships in a really from the ground up organic design fashion.
Mhm.
And so the summit continued year on year on year.
Mhm.
And both Matt and Nick helped to build out what the summit has become, and they're both still very much involved. Matt is our day-to-day CEO. Nick is the chairman of our board, and so we work really hand in hand to ensure that that original goal of Concordia to be a space for public-private partnerships, to be a space where market-led solutions can be advanced, to
Mhm.
be a space where conversation and convening is intentional and constructive and brings new ideas forward. All of that is paramount to everything that we're designing.
I think that word convening is the theme for
Mhm.
today's conversation. But what would you say their superpower is?
Matt and Nick, respectively.
Hmm.
I would say Nick is brilliant from a business perspective side. He also is leadership at Libra Group, which is a conglomerate, and he really just navigates the motivations of the private sector. He understands what drives good decisions
Hmm.
and how to tease that out in spaces where there may not be precedent or something to base it on. So he's very kind of exploratory in that way.
Hmm.
Matt is a fantastic orator in that he could galvanize an audience. I mean, that he just brings people together and gets them excited and connects with people, whether it's one-on-one or 4,000 persons in him. And I am always impressed when I hear him kind of speak to an audience or address about the eloquence and ability to tie a number of complex themes into an area. Because again, this space that Concordia is operating in, it's not siloed.
Hmm.
We're not working solely with tech industries or geopolitical affairs or health companies, right? We're connecting all of these different pieces that, as a global community, we are all connected on.
Hmm.
And so that ability, I think it's very important to note both. Well, Concordia is nonpartisan, but both Matt and Nick hold different political ideologies. And so this ability to come together again and really say, okay, what's the best thing for, these constituents is, I think, a power of them both.
Yeah, and that's what I thought you were going to say. It's what I've heard you talk about in the past, that I think in today's world, that is a superpower. And I ask the question as if they were one,
Yeah.
because they have to be. I've never met them. I don't know them, but I know them through you. And
Hmm.
that's what I thought their superpower was today.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's an embodiment of what Concordia's mission is and where I see places like America needing to further go in. I am deeply concerned by the polarization and siloing of conversation sets. And so that's driven by politics, by personalities, by um, short versus longer term thinking and goals. And I think the fact that Matt and Nick are able to, routinely bring their bases together,
Right.
it's very important.
Yep. Now, you started as Director of Social Impact in
Mhm.
2016.
I did.
What were you doing back then?
We, so Concordia is great in that it is a very entrepreneurial space. And so since I've joined, there's been a few different versions or iterations of Concordia. And my title sort of represents those learning moments for us. So when I joined in 2016, we had a initiative that focused around what we called campaigns, and they were meant to go deep into specific area sets and create ecosystems that supported public-private partnerships.
Mhm.
We selected a handful of issue sets. One was around labor trafficking, another was on a sustainable global food supply. We were building one around energy security. So we had these different campaigns that had consistent programming across our events. It created these micro project sets. There was research associated with all of these that were looking at the landscape under which public-private partnerships could be developed. And
Mhm.
so my job was to oversee the direction and design of those campaigns, to manage a team that included a research arm with the P3 Impact Award. And yeah, just we linked that to what Concordia defined as its social impact. So this idea if we were more than just a convening entity, we were doing something, and this is our impact.
Right. Do you still have the P3 award? You were
We
working with
sadly
the State Department when you
We
launched.
sadly do not. It's paused at the moment. We had 12 glorious years in the partnership with State Department and the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. Uh, and that three-legged award and the ability to work so closely with both state and Darden on it really reflected a lot of the different drivers of expertise that underpin a public-private partnership. We were one in and of itself. And so we had astounding research and ability to connect back to the practitioners through through Darden. We at Concordia brought in this insight and connectivity to the private sector and this amplification platform, of course, that Concordia represents. And then with State Department, it's about scale and reach, right? That's the role, the traditional role that government has played in development-based public-private partnerships. So that award itself ran for 12 years. It was meant to collect partnership examples and stories from around the world. So we have a repository of hundreds of impactful partnerships reaching all sorts of national, multinational, or just more localized projects. And really, we learned as a collective community so much about the evolutionary space of public-private partnership design and governance and best practices. And so then one of the favorite things that I did for that project set was we produced a 10-year report of learnings and best practices. So again, contributing to how groups partner.
Right.
But to your question, no, that project is currently paused.
Okay. So you were Senior Director of Partnerships for then 3 years before
Hmm.
becoming Executive Director. You're coming up on a
Yep,
year now as
correct.
Executive Director. What's that experience been like for you?
As Senior Director of Partnerships, my mandate evolved to maintaining the thought leadership and best practices around partnering, but to hone in on how it was communicated. So at that time in the organization, we started to build out our membership model.
Mhm.
This was important because it helped maintain continuity of the ecosystem we're working with year round,
Mhm.
stopping us from being, again, just a single event that people went to during UNGA, but that truly a strategic partner in their impact pieces.
Mhm.
This is also when we moved away from the campaign model because we felt we weren't positioned right to go so deep onto a specific issue. I mean, it just didn't fit with our staffing, with our knowledge base, with what we were actually set up to do. But rather, we wanted to support that connecting ecosystem. And so that's what the membership model that we designed came out. We also at that time increased the number of events we did. So we moved from just the one event alongside UN General Assembly to hosting regional events all around the world. And so we've convened across Latin America, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and done smaller dinner series in other spaces as well. So that was that arc of kind of Concordia 2.0 of growing into it. And now we're moving into another development phase where we'll maintain, but we're enhancing and working through what membership looks like moving forward to make sure we're always, designing with that partnering community in mind.
Mhm.
So we're preparing and, rethinking through all of those pieces. We're adjusting our regional footprint model to really hone in on the value add and the differentiation that Concordia offers comparative to other convening spaces. So it's going to be what we're calling Horizon Summits instead of regional initiatives, but it allows us to bring global actors together to a specific space. We're going deeper into more retreat or experiential and relationship building spaces, which is really great. And so we're working through all of that. So those are organizational shifts and adjustments. The team has grown tremendously since I first joined. And so we're bringing in really smart experiences and kind of growing up as an organization as well. And then that allows me to step more so into the executive director role and see how to best design a team, a strategy, and an implementation plan that meets the vision that Matt and Nick and I help craft.
I I can't think of an organization that convenes a more diverse global group of stakeholders. How do you foster trust? What are some of your key strategies for fostering trust among these stakeholders?
Well, we're incredibly relationship based.
Yeah,
And so we're not an anonymous organization in that the groups that I get to work with or that others get to work with who are part of our community, they know us. They pick up the phone, they get me. They pick up the phone, they get my colleague Cooper. They pick up the phone, they get, they get the people.
hmm,
And I think that those relationships, because at the end of the day, of the emotional intelligence that my team holds, matched with their individual subject matter expertise, it
right,
couples into something where they're really like, there's real interaction here.
right,
Interaction is what builds trust. It's that routine, continued showing up and saying, okay, let's design something together. Let's listen to each other about what matters most and really make sure everyone's feeling heard and valued and appreciated. And so those tenets of how we operate and work, I think, are part of the pieces that really contribute to the trust that people place on us. They know they're not going to go on stage and get heckled, or there's not these gotcha moments. It's not the intention of Concordia. We're not trying to be a sensationalist news platform. We're trying to be a constructive place for engagement. And
right.
so everything we do is about that trust piece. I used to laugh because it's like the number one bumper sticker requirement for a public-private partnership. It's trust. But
Mm,
how do you build trust? And that's always like an existential academic debate and rigor, but like practically, there's some very specific steps and things that you just have to do routinely and truly value doing to get there. Now, do all my speakers love each other? No. Certainly, we bring disparate attitudes, personalities, profiles, perspectives to the stage. That's what we do intentionally.
right,
So it's making sure that they all feel also when they're going on stage that they're entering into a safe space, that they're entering into a space where they're going to get the same amount of respect as the person before them and the person after them, that they're not combating with each other, but they're all contributing to a shared goal of dialogue and enhanced decision making.
right. So now, to add to the complexity, we've got this emerging technology of AI that you and I
Mm-hmm.
have discussed. You've got a conference coming up in September, your annual conference in New York. Will that play a role yet? I'm sure you're
It
in
has to.
discussion about it right now.
It has to, because it's shaping the world that we're all living in. It's shaping how we engage with people, how we're planning for our futures. It's shaping the very climate that we're operating in. It has obvious environmental impacts. You mentioned trust. You know,
Oh,
what is trusted tech, right? What is this? And if anybody can fake a video or, use a code to present work, I mean, it's all just we're all learning together on this. So we work with some tremendous drivers of AI solutions. Some of my I've worked for years with Salesforce, AWS, Microsoft, Meta, right? I mean, like we use these tools on our day-to-day basis, but we also work with them on their partnering and broader impact pieces. But yeah, I mean, AI is definitely it's you can't have a conversation without it. It's impacting all the other verticals as well. They're not like standalone tools, right? It's similar to when I worked at Peace Tech, right? We had this saying that tech is a neutral platform and it's how it's applied that can make it a positive or a negative force.
right.
Well, AI is tech. So how it's being used by data scientists, health practitioners, uh, upskilling workforce elements, right? All of this, like it's just about how society harnesses it. And so that is just kind of the stance that we're taking on it.
Well, innovative technology is one of
One
six
of our things.
programming
Mhm.
themes that you have on your website. I haven't had the pleasure of attending one of your conferences yet, but I intend to, and I think
I
I'm,
hope you do.
I'm excited about it.
What I will say, attendance is magical. I did not understand what Concordia was until I actually attended it, and I'd been working there for 6 months, right? Like you have to be there to actually really understand. Convening feels like such a passive space. Concordia is different. And so attendance is magical, but we also live stream our two plenary stages. So the idea is that, again, anyone around the world can access the conversations that we're having.
Mhm. Another one of those themes, health opportunities and challenges,
Mhm.
is your programming theme.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate
Well,
this year's conference?
we're covering health and opportunities and challenges is from a few different perspectives. First, because Concordia always takes place alongside the UN General Assembly, we do try to use our platform to support different UN broader global conversations. So this year's UN health agenda focuses on non-communicable diseases or NCDs. And so, of course, we'll be talking about some of those. And so things like diabetes, obesity, cancer oncology is a big focus point for us. We actually do a really amazing convening around breast cancer policy and the continuum of care and detection that women around the world have access to. And
Mhm.
so we have a luncheon focused on that and with partners like AstraZeneca, Siemens Healthineers, and Merck. We will be talking about mental health. Mental health is very much a dominant theme that Concordia has covered over the past years. We were the platform by which the previous Surgeon General launched the mental health hotline. Goldie Hawn is coming back to talk about mental health in youth. We have every town speaking, and we know that mental health and gun regulation go hand in hand when it comes to safe societies. Um, the Taiwan Minister of Health is speaking around mental health. So yeah, I think that's always an important one. We talk about addiction and opioid abuse because so much of the intervention really does require a public-private partnership to help with the destigmatization and the actual support that individuals struggling require. Um, AI. AI is obviously a tool that's being used for research and detection of potential health verticals and indices that might impact someone's care treatment. Longevity is an important one as well. And so really thinking about aging societies and what kind of health structures are put in place to support healthy aging. We work with such a variety of partners that it's great to see how they show up, whether you expect them to be a health-oriented company or whether it's more of like an angle that they're taking into some of their conversation sets. So it's always fun to see how people show up at these conversations.
What you just alluded to is the interdependency between these themes. They're
Mhm.
they're all interconnected. And
Absolutely.
what about democracy, security, and global political risk?
Oh,
That
matters.
is going to be interesting.
It sure will, yes. I love this track. Again, as a foreign policy junkie, this one is just so important. I think we're seeing some evolutionary elements around democracy and things that we expect certain states to do or countries to do, and things that we don't expect them to do. I think, we have great collaboration with leaders. In the past, we've hosted leadership from places like NATO, Munich Security Conference, right? And so it's this idea of who are the players working around democracy, risk, and security matters. Private sector is taking an increasing role in these spaces in terms of developing technologies that governments can be using. Civil society is important to ensure that there's checks and balances on how that's used. What's important is, again, whenever Concordia covers an issue set, we try to do it from all sides. And so we're not trying to take a stance as an organization or to be inadvertently promoting something. Democracy is the one thing that I think is an outlier to that. We are staunchly a pro-democracy organization. We want to be promoting Western democratic ideas in what we're amplifying. And so that is perhaps the one stance we take. Now, how that's actually applied, if you look at some of the contentious security matters around the world right now, if we are to have one view presented, we will have the other view. And it's not for us to be saying, pick this side, pick that side. That's not our goal. We often have heads of state, which can lead to a little bit more of like a pro state policy piece. For example, we've been pleased to host the president of Turkey in the past. He's often playing an outsized role in terms of Middle East and diplomacy. And so like how he stands in sort of this nexus space is always really interesting and illuminating to hear from. We have a lot of Latin American leaders coming this year, which is so great because we know that the politics in Latin America are very complex and dynamic and very important to global stability, even if they're not given the highlights and the headlines that they should be. And yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to say too many names right now, but we have just some really extraordinary heads of state coming that I couldn't be more excited to be hearing from because of this particular programming theme.
Are you hesitant because they haven't confirmed yet, or you're in conversation and it
They're
would just,
confirmed, but we haven't publicly announced them. And again, we always have to be mindful about the security surrounding our event. I think, again, these are the day-to-day logistics that nobody wants to like worry their head about, but we absolutely do. And we want to make sure that what we're designing for is going to be safe for everyone who comes.
yeah. Certainly the global economy and trade is going to be
Mhm.
a hot topic this year.
Yeah.
Every one of your themes
I
is
know.
a
It's
hot
it's
topic.
almost like they touch our daily lives.
Yeah.
Yes, so global economy and trade, definitely, we're all watching the trade with the US as an American organization. Definitely that's a topic set, but we also have kind of a macro look. I'll say one of my favorite elements of this, if
Right.
I could choose a favorite, which we're really not supposed to do. I love working with the leaders from the Gulf because they're playing a really interesting role right now in terms of economics and trade as kind of middle powers.
Mhm.
That also goes for peace and security processes as well, by the way. If you look at Qatar and kind of its role in diplomatic security and negotiation elements in the region. So these middle powers, I think, are fascinating to be watching, and I'm really thrilled that we have such representation from investment entities, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and just kind of growing in this space, but from that angle.
I think about your education, this rock solid education to prepare you for what you do today, and then all of the positions that you've held really has prepared you for this moment.
I hope so.
Now Concordia is celebrating its 15th
Yes.
anniversary. What leadership advice would you share with young professionals today? One of the things, by the way, that you shared with us is the importance of, hey, look, you might be the CEO of a small to medium-sized business in the United States today, and you might think primarily domestically, but we can't as
Mm.
individuals. We are global citizens. All of these things. affect us. And so that's what you shared with us. I'm paraphrasing you, obviously, from earlier this year. Any additional thoughts?
I do think coming together matters. And so whether you are a smaller medium enterprise that has a primarily like family run feel to it, and you don't think you're part of this broader piece, if your supply chain is, if your suppliers are, if your market is, like we're all connected to this point. So I think coming together matters. And I
Hmm.
think that there is an ease of doing business remote these days
Hmm.
that is important. And I think certainly, we needed it during COVID. But just because you can do something completely separate and as an island and make your own decisions and like be kind of very narrow in your space, I
Hmm.
don't recommend it as a strategy for the long term. And I do think showing up matters. I do think engagement matters, asking questions, getting to know people, and understanding your piece in this broader ecosystem matters. So yeah, I think from a leadership perspective, it's important to hold the mirror up. It's important to know what your strengths are and to find other team members who can shore up capacity gaps and good management styles, right? But you can't just own the world internally. You have to look outwards too.
And so what goes hand in hand with that is that you have to be informed, right? You
Mhm.
have to educate yourself. You have to stay on top of what's happening in the world. And so many of us don't do that today. How do we
Well, I think it's definitely
encourage?
a coping mechanism for so many of us, right?
Yeah,
Or it leads to this entrenchment and this desire to only hear from the voices you're comfortable hearing from. So you go
right.
to your single news source, or you go to where you know, and you're not going to have whiplash there because a policy has changed 37 times, or because of just there's there's a humongous enormity to the news these days, and I empathize with that tremendously.
Yeah. The enormity to the news. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but that might cause people to go, oh, that's
Mhm.
more of a reason not to engage,
Not to.
not
Mhm.
to learn, not to stay abreast of what's going on. I think it's so important for us to encourage each other to learn and to grow.
Yeah.
Uh, that's why I'm involved with the Denver Council on Foreign Relations, and there's another organization that you serve as a volunteer for, and I'm trying to remember. It's a council. Um, you talk
Oh,
about the U.S. Global
USGLC,
Leadership
Global
Coalition.
Leaderships Council. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so USGLC, it's based out of DC, but they have amazing footprints throughout the US, and their whole aim is to bring international politics to everyone's backyard.
Mm.
And so, because again, whether you live in DC or in Denver or in Iowa City, like these things impact. And too often people have misguided impressions as to what US foreign policy is, what our US foreign policy budget is, and the impact or the connection points to it. So it
Right.
becomes, as we've seen this year, a very vulnerable component of domestic budget and policy lines. USGLC, I think, does a tremendous work working bipartisan to ensure that those conversations are happening locally, that there's more awareness being raised, that our policymakers across Cap Hill really are really kind of involved in it, even if they're not part of the subcommittees. So I love the work that they do.
Is there a formal relationship between Concordia and USGLC?
Only that we've been, a platform to amplify their leadership in the past. And I currently sit on the Colorado Advisory Council. So no, they're not. They've been Concordia members in the past, to be sure. And so we've like buddied up on those pieces. But no, we're both independent entities.
But how do they, what is it that they do that causes it to be more local? I mean, I like,
Oh, they
oh,
travel. And so they're doing town halls,
okay.
and they're bringing things around. And so when I get emails from them, it's hyper localized to this is what Senator Bennett is doing in Colorado around this thing. Like, here's how you reach out to them. So it's about taking the individuals and connecting them to more their state politics
Okay.
as it plays out.
Okay. Good.
Mhm.
So,
And Concordia does things more at a national level. So while we do have a handful of convenings across the US, like we've hosted in Lexington, Kentucky, or the Research Triangle in North Carolina, and in 2026 we'll likely be in a few states. Our our mandate is about saying, okay, how are these global pieces coming in and being like, what's a local lens on a global issue? Whereas I think USGLC is a little bit more of like, what's the local issue with a global lens?
okay, great. What haven't I asked you today? Have I missed some topics that you think are important for our audience to understand about you and
Mhm.
Concordia?
Well, I'll take the opportunity just to say I'm tremendously proud of how Concordia has grown over the past 15 years, and it's only possible because of the members that keep coming. Membership is how we ensure we're driving mission day to day. Otherwise, we just get lost in the minutia of designing a conference. But because we have members, we get to remember who that conference is for, and we think through what would be the unique value add for individual X or organization Y or company Z to come to an event. And so that gives us that kind of human touch and constructive engagement point under which we get to design these convenings for. So I would just encourage people to think about membership and know that it's truly a space for year-round convene, connect, create benefits and a spot to kind of make your mark in this very dynamic global environment.
You have some huge sponsors as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so why did they do that? Why do they participate in Concordia?
I love hearing from them why they do it. For some, it is because of the authentic way they get to communicate what they're working on. It doesn't feel like greenwashing or like a marketing ploy, but they craft with us a message. And so they really feel like they're being heard as opposed to presenting as a commercial.
Right,
For some, it's because of the behind the scenes relationships that they're brokering. And so we help curate conversations, introduce them to different players. We're not ever in a lobbying position. We're not a lobbyist entity, but we're definitely, because of who we are able to bring kind of the powerful people together and let them do the work together.
right.
So I think that that's tremendously valuable. I think that trust component you spoke to earlier, knowing they know that they can trust us with their strategy and we can find creative and smart ways that harness the strengths of Concordia to deliver for it. I think, again, the year-on-year retention of these entities and the fact that they are either talking about us to their peers. So we actually get a lot of recommendations or endorsements through that, or they themselves as individuals have moved to a new spot and they've brought their new organization along with us. That speaks to the value that they find in a platform like Concordia.
Mhm.
We are we're a beautiful event. Some people just purely like the idea that they can reach 4,000 people, they can have media partners, they can be taken care of. It's slick, it's glossy, there's a report. We do it well. We have an amazing production company that helps us tell these stories in just such a beautiful, high touch way. But at the end of the day, everybody who's coming to Concordia has an impact component to it. And the fact that they get to work with us year round on that, as opposed to just at the events, I think is a distinguisher between other conferences.
What I'm amazed at is you do this with a relatively small staff. Do you also have volunteers that help you produce these events?
So we are a team of 29, 27 on the website, but I've got two folks joining on Monday. Couldn't be more excited. We're a team of 29. And then again, I mentioned our production company, DeFore. They bring in a lot of the event infrastructure that helps. So the folks that check you in, three of those folks will be Concordia team, the rest will be volunteers.
Right.
The folks that are at the help desk or that are staffing certain components. A lot of that is volunteer. They're oftentimes past interns of Concordia, so they really know us and they want to see their project kind of come to fruition.
Right.
They might be I mean, my mother-in-law is one, and so it's people that know us and they get to come to the event and see what they hear about all the time,
Right.
which I truly love. And so yeah, our event footprint is bigger, but again, not anonymous. They're not just staffing, right, or contractors. They're part of like a wider ecosystem of Concordia, which is really nice.
What are the total number of conferences that you hold throughout the year?
It varies. We typically have about four major conferences and then smaller events or groups often come in and say, hey, can you do something on the sidelines? For example, later this year, there's the Organization of American States Summit of the Americas, which happens every 4 years in various Latin American capitals. This year's Summit of the Americas is taking place in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. So the presidency asked us to come in and be a space that allows for more of a private sector space to complement the strong government relations and policy dynamic that OAS hosts. So we come in and we work alongside these other major convenings and we contribute to a broader agenda that we're all aligned on. We just do it in our own Concordia fashion and way. And I think that's really great because it meets people where they are and
Mhm.
it adds different dimensions to what people are all seeking for when they come to an event.
Mhm. Anna, I'm so grateful that you spent this time with me again today. I think you're absolutely extraordinary. You're brilliant, you're articulate. It's been fun to see how you've grown as a leader through this organization. And Concordia has given you an opportunity for tremendous growth
Yeah.
as a person.
Yeah.
Um, so,
They've been a great place to work. I'm entering up on just over 9 years here, and I think it's been tremendous. I never would have described myself as entrepreneurial until I came to Concordia. And after a couple of years of being very uncomfortable with fast-paced change, realized that I could lean into it and, in fact, drive it. I think there's a lot of things I've been able to try, a lot of places I've been able to go, people I've been able to meet that I don't think is characteristic of the average individual's career path. And so I'm truly grateful for what I've been able to grow into through Concordia, but then also to give back and to leave an impression. It's been a wonderful home.
thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay, bye for now.